We've been looking back over the earth-shattering and highly classified information released by Edward Snowden, a CIA analyst turned whistleblower who fled the United States after his revelations about the secret surveillance state rocked the world. In Part 1, we examined the extensive domestic surveillance being carried out by America's National Security Agency, or NSA, along with its British counterpart, the Government Communications Headquarters, GCHQ, and questioned the legitimacy of targeting Muslims and political activists for collective surveillance.
This program is a massive and unprecedented grab of information by the intelligence agencies. They're sweeping up, or they're tracking, literally every call made in this country, and the Constitution simply doesn't allow the government to do that.
In Part 2, we'll lift the lid on government spying on governments and find out what happens when spies go to work for the highest bidder in the private sector. We'll also find out what's happened to those who helped bring Snowden's story into the spotlight. Even at the international level, the scope of the NSA GCHQ surveillance seems limitless. They have ears against the very heartbeat of foreign states. Under the NSA's Boundless Informant program, the Middle East is the most watched region by far, but domestic and allied surveillance is widespread too. GCHQ's stated ambition of being able to exploit any phone, anywhere, anytime, seems to have been well met, with the communications of at least 35 world leaders bugged, including those of German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Communications at the last G20 meeting, held in 2009 in London, were also intercepted at the highest levels. British intelligence set up fake internet cafes to spy on enemies and allies alike, to get a live picture of who was saying what to whom. This gave the British and American representatives a massive advantage in these crucial global negotiations.
The Ayatollah went to the northern part, the Kurd part of Iran not so long ago, and NSA and GCHQ intercepted all the communications right down to, the last detail. I mean, we now know that, not only Angela Merkel, but the German Chancellor's, messages and conversations are being leaked, but that has nothing to do with genuine, I don't think, anything to do with genuine national security of any country. The technological ability of the National Security Agency in the United States and the GCHQ, the Government Communications Headquarters in Britain, the skills they've had and the technology they've built up are so much greater than those of probably any other country, including Russia and China, actually.
Even membership of the US-UK-led Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, which dates all the way back to 1946 and includes Australia, Canada and New Zealand, was no protection for the privacy of their communications. Anglo-American spying on our Five Eyes allies was covert, but revealed in a top-secret memo going back to 2005. While the bulk of online data passes through their national jurisdictions anyway, the US and UK are also tapping directly into the fibre optic network, the backbone of the internet across the world. If knowledge is power, this amounts to a colossal imbalance of it, and that's provoked widespread anger in the global south and sparked concerns over national sovereignty even among European powers. United Nations representatives are also wary of the implications for the human right to privacy and freedom of expression. They are now asking serious questions about the effective protection of privacy and civil rights in the digital age, and have argued that not everything that is technically feasible for bodies like the NSA should be allowed.
The resolution provides much-needed guidance in finding answers to these questions. For the first time, in the framework of the United Nations, this resolution unequivocally states that the same rights that people have offline must also be protected online. It also emphasizes that unlawful and arbitrary surveillance and the interception of communications are highly intrusive acts that violate the right to privacy and may also violate the freedom of expression. Furthermore, the resolution expresses deep concern at the negative impact that various forms of extraterritorial surveillance may have on the exercise and enjoyment of human rights.
The more I watch the reactions, the more I entertain the idea that none of this is about national security. There's something else at stake that people in position of power value very much. That's inside information about people that they can use.
It's incredible how much information all of us are putting out across the internet and in other ways day after day after day. When I walk into a supermarket and use my loyalty card, I am telling that supermarket the type of things I like to eat, the type of things I like to drink, how often I like to shop. They're working out whether if they give me a free cup of coffee when I come in, will I spend more? And then they're spreading that information around to other companies. So for us to start getting a little bit hoity-toity about the government doing a little bit of that too, I think we have to be a little bit more honest about how much we're putting out there. I'm actually quite shocked at how little people know about how much information they themselves are putting out there for everyone else to see.
Your PlayStation and your LG TV keep a record of what you watch. Tesco's now films the behaviour of its customers for advertisers. Globally, the trade in telecommunications data is completely unregulated, and this gives private corporations an incredibly detailed and intimate knowledge of who we are and what we care about. Information they use to compel us to purchase their products. And because all these corporations use US-dominated software, websites and payment services like Visa, the universe of data they collect is also, however indirectly, funneled straight back to the NSA. So when Vladimir Putin buys a Coke on his card in Moscow, they know about it seconds later.
One of its missions is not only to prevent serious crime and terrorism and so on, but to ensure Britain's economic well-being. Now, what on earth does that mean? They can certainly find out what's happening on the oil price, say. Well-being is such a vast area, a vast sort of definition. That's the nation's economic well-being. But underneath that, as you suggest, there are individual companies.
Corporate espionage is useful for political as well as advertising purposes. Like the police, businesses are spying on organisations and community campaigns who may pose a political threat. According to the Centre for Corporate Policy, oil and electricity companies routinely spy on environmental campaigns like Greenpeace and corporations like BAE on campaigns against the arms trade. The US Chamber of Commerce spies on a host of community campaigns, and Bank of America, much like the government of America, spies on WikiLeaks. The extent to which the government is also involved in this kind of politically competitive surveillance remains to be seen. But Jamil Jaffer, the Deputy Legal Director of the American Civil Liberties Union, has stated that these are precisely the kinds of practices the US Constitution intended to prohibit, and warns of the danger of the NSA being asked to use its surveillance capabilities to discredit political opponents, journalists and human rights activists, reminding the world that the NSA has used its power this way in the past, as has GCHQ.
You bring dictators surveillance equipment to do evil things, but you will benefit because you will learn what they are listening to, what they are afraid of, who are the most important people in the country opposing the government, organizing political events and so on. You will be able to predict future happenings.
Not only do private corporations have their own surveillance systems for governments and themselves, they also sell them. Repressive governments and dictators all over the world have access to an international surveillance supermarket stocked by private corporations. This was first exposed by the WikiLeaks release of the spy files in 2011, which told many stories. One was that when the governments of Egypt and Libya were overthrown, rebels uncovered secret listening rooms from which their dictators had had their every move online and conversation on the phone monitored, using surveillance technology and software bought from Western corporations. Amices in France, Gamma in the UK, ZTE of China. And without such revolts, whatever the diplomatic status of Western powers, for their private contractors, it would still be business as usual. So, is the private data market out of control?
Do we want to live in a society which is a dictatorship? Do we want to tell individuals and companies all the time what they can and can't do? Or do we want an open market? If a British company is going abroad to sell an ID system or a system for bank cards in an African country, you can't tell them that's wrong, because we have all sorts of restrictions on what we can do and on identification and that sort of thing. So I think to generalise about saying that by selling a company that restricts your movements in some way or another, or stops you being able to use somebody else's identity or bank card, I don't think we can do that. I think we have to just accept some of that is going to be happening, and we have to draw the line at a much higher level.
While government and corporate spies get free rein over the private information of citizens and the power to transmit, copy and use it as they like, when a whistleblower returns the favour, they are relentlessly pursued. The British government and security services have not only condemned Edward Snowden, deemed detrimental to the public interest for revealing all this to the world, there has also been a significant escalation in the campaign against journalists who report on leaked material. This began with WikiLeaks and has climaxed with an unprecedented crackdown on a highly respected media outlet, the Guardian newspaper. For British Prime Minister David Cameron, the Guardian's publications showed no sense of social responsibility and threatened national security.
The leaks from Snowden have been very damaging. They put our operations at risk. It is clear that our adversaries are rubbing their hands with glee. Al-Qaeda is lapping it up.
David Miranda, who was working informally with leading Guardian journalist Glenn Greenwald, was recently detained for 9 hours in a British airport under the Terrorism Act. He had his equipment seized, and all on suspicion of transporting leaked documents. Government officials have threatened print bans and even went so far as to enter the Guardian's head office in London to supervise the destruction of drives storing classified documents.
I think detaining somebody at an airport who's carrying material, classified information, documents that he's not entitled to, and stopping him and questioning him, I think that's fine, personally.
The Guardian's editor has also been interrogated by a Home Affairs Select Committee, which accused him of committing a criminal offence by duplicating classified material.
Well, I think it is important context that editors of probably the world's leading newspapers in America, the Washington Post and the New York Times, took virtually identical decisions. So this is not a rogue newspaper. It is serious newspapers who've had long experience of dealing with national security. The problem with these accusations is that they tend to be very vague.
Do you love this country?
I'm slightly surprised to be asked the question, but yes, we are patriots. And one of the things we are patriotic about is the nature of the democracy and the nature of a free press and the fact that one can in this country discuss and report these things.